Hello, welcome to AI in Action. My name is Maurie, and I'm here with my husband Jim. And it is Sunday evening, and we are here to talk about artificial intelligence, which we do almost every single Sunday. So, for this
Except last Sunday.
podcast, we are going to cover headlines. The first headline that Jim pointed out to me that I was very excited about was that we actually have an additional state that has reported that they are releasing AI guidance for schools. So,
One thing we forgot to mention,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. We forgot to mention what happened last Sunday. We didn't drop a podcast last Sunday.
That is true. We did not drop a podcast last Sunday.
We had gone to see our son and we got delayed getting back. So we were not able to drop it. We do try to do this every week, but some weeks we miss if something's going on, and unfortunately last week was one of them. I'm sorry, moving back to what we were talking about, this particular headline has to do with the gains, if you call them gains, the gains that have been made in states recognizing the need for this stuff. And it was interesting to me because I know you've had a lot of conversations also with Pat, and he was talking about this stuff as well.
Pat is the chief academic officer at code.org, and he's also a leader of Teach AI, which is an initiative that supports schools in using and teaching about artificial intelligence. He does a great job on his LinkedIn profile of posting when states come out with AI guidance. So I think that the last post that he just did was like 20 states have officially released AI guidance, which is like 59% of them are saying that they're like crafting some form of artificial intelligence guidance, which is great. But the thing that I am noticing is that a lot of times it is very vague. The guidance is very vague, which, it leads me to something that just happened, which, we'll talk about it in a little bit toward the end of the podcast. But I wish that the states would give more defined guidance for teachers as to how they want them to educate and utilize artificial intelligence in K-12 education, or even in, K-20, as they call it, just universities. Doesn't have to just be K-12.
Well, the problem is, you've said this many times, we've talked about it many times, is that, first of all, states move slow. Second of all, education tends to move slower, and in many cases it needs to, so it doesn't get whiplash following every trend that bounces back and forth. But when you combine that with the fact that the AI industry itself is multiple years old, but this new large language model that everyone is using so much of is barely 2 years old. And because it's barely 2 years old, it takes a long time for them to react to this stuff. So I don't think they know how to react to it.
I don't think that they know enough about it. Like what you were just saying, that I don't like technical wise. I don't know if they know enough about it to really react.
Well, and you've got the one camp that says if you give too much guidance or too much regulations or whatever, you're going to end up stifling creativity, stifling growth, stifling whatever. Of course, that's more to do with governance than guidance. But then you've got the other ones that say if you don't give any guidance, then people are just going to do they're going to choose on their own to do nothing, which is not fair in the case of the education. I don't think it's fair to the kids. Some people think it's better. But anyway, the bottom line is the needle has moved, according to Pat, that a year ago, no state had guidance. You just said 20 do. So It's an improvement.
It's moving in the right direction. It's moving in the right direction.
It was
called a solid start. States are crafting AI guidance for schools, but have to do more. And it's in edweek.org. So that's a great article. You can look that up. The next thing that we want to talk about is from venturebeat.com. There's a new open source AI leader reflection, 70 Bs performance questioned, and it's accused of fraud. So what is this headline about?
Well, I put this one in there. I know it's a little different than what we normally do, but this particular company and this person is fairly well known in the AI community, Matt Schumer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that everybody that's trying to ride the hype bubble is trying to be first. This is not an unusual thing in the world of technology anyway, but he was trying to get out in front and make a claim about a model they put out that then everyone discovered it wasn't reproducible, what he said. And this is more, the open source community is very different than closed. Closed is Google, OpenAI, ironically, um, Anthropic. These all have models. They run on their own servers. They don't open the source. They don't open the model, any of the weights, biases, none of that stuff. The open source community is fighting, clawing. It's more almost pure capitalism, dog eat dog. Everybody's trying to be the best. And the 70B is a 70 billion parameter model, which is considered a maybe medium sized model, a little small. If you compare it to the closed source ones, it's very small. If you compare it to the most open source ones, it's medium sized. Either way, he either didn't know what he was talking about or just flat lied. The point
Hmm.
is, when you start talking about open source or you start talking about these different models, you have to be aware that not everybody's on the up and up. I don't think that makes them less valuable. I think they're very valuable. I just think you have to understand them, which I believe rolls into that long-term goal of educating people about what all this stuff means so they understand what they're hearing and looking at. Otherwise, they can be led in any direction without any guidance. And that's why I threw that in there. So anyway, continue.
Okay. Well, the next headline, everybody's been talking about it. Everybody's been trying to put it through its paces. OpenAI.com introduced OpenAI O1 preview. Of course, the first thing that I noticed about it that I didn't particularly care for is that you can't upload anything, because one of the things I really like to do is put things into ChatGPT and have it, give me summaries or let's discuss this or whatever. But this is just the preview for OpenAI's O1 model.
They have
So
weird
what do
naming
you think? I
conventions.
know that you do what?
They have weird naming conventions.
Yes, they do. I know that you have been playing with this a lot. I know that you think it's a really great model. So why don't you
Well,
tell us
I'm
about it?
well past playing with it. It's this.
It cut you
I'm
off, didn't
using
it?
it as I'm using it as a tool, and I used it too much. Apparently, it is fairly new. They call it preview. Apparently, I used it too much. It did. It cut me off last night at 7 o'clock, and I'm supposed to be back on now. Just literally about 10 minutes ago, it's supposed to let me back on. Um, this is a really good tool. Now, I'm not saying this is like the next generation of AI. I'm saying that I believe, based on what I'm reading and based on what I'm seeing, that they've done some very, very creative fine tuning with the model itself and the prompt engineering. What it's good at that I love so much is planning, project planning, things like that. Like recently, I showed you a simulator that I built that allows you to simulate what's going on from an AI perspective, interacting with teachers in classroom, because it gives us some ideas because we're doing some pilots. And I wanted a simulator. So I built one, but I used it as the planning tool to build the simulator. And it was amazing. And I think it writes better code too, because once I build the whatever project I'm working on and the steps and stuff like that, then when I start actually creating the project, I've started using it more than Claude, and I like Claude's project management ability. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an amazing tool. Now it's not everything to everybody. If you're trying to use it to do stuff like tell me a joke or how many letters are in strawberry, which I think it actually can tell you. Those kind of tasks are really, they're either made for there's a preview mini model and there's also chat the 4.0 and the 4.0 mini. Those are better for that. This model has a much broader knowledge base and it really does a good job at project planning and coding and stuff like that. I'm going to work on the mini model a little bit now because I got cut off and I need to get used to it. So anyway, I
Yeah, one of the things I noticed when I was playing with it is that I really like that it tells you what it is doing. When you prompt it with something, it'll start saying, analyzing, and it'll say looking for resources, and then it'll say coming up with a plan, or it kind of it basically puts on the screen kind of its chain of thought. Which isn't that what those different about this large language, this
That's
O1
the
isn't?
speculation. I suspect it's
Okay.
chain of thought or chain of reasoning, which has been around a
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
long time in, AI world or, large language model world, but it's been around for a while. I showed you a long time ago. Professor Synapse was one of the first ones I'd seen. It reminds me of that in terms of how it kind of works. So yes, you are correct. It shows you some really good stuff. So they're also claiming they've added some safety and governance thing. I didn't test that. Honestly, I don't spend a lot of time on that kind of stuff because I'm trying to actually build real things and make useful things. And I'm not saying it's not valuable if people want to do it. I just don't have the time to figure out how to jailbreak these things. And it's also a good way to get cut off. And I get cut off often enough without getting cut off because I'm trying to jailbreak it. And they've gotten stricter on this model too. If you start trying to jailbreak this model or do stuff with it, they may cut you off permanently. And I use this too much. I don't want to do that. So
Yeah, I don't know what you do.
their fear factors working on me.
Don't know what you'd do if we took away your AI. Okay,
I'm
so
telling you, I got
here's
a lot of them.
the next headline from TechCrunch is that Apple Intelligence is now live in public beta. So tell me, has my phone changed?
No, you have to sign up for the beta. I like testing new things, but I use my phone a lot, and your phone has enough problems as it is, even though it's brand new from all the apps you load on it. You have to sign up for the beta. You have to load a beta version of iOS version 18.1, which I do believe is supported. It should be on both of our phones because we got new phones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I'm not ready. I'm going to wait a little while longer and let some other people test it. Like I said, AI to me isn't just a toy I play with. I try to play with it enough to get real feel for stuff people might be interested in using, but I use it as a tool. And I am not sure Apple's ready. There's some bullet points that are in this particular release. The one
Yes,
that interests me is Siri.
absolutely. I have been using Siri more and more often, especially
You're
after
a heavy
you finally
user.
convinced me to get AirPods. And the fact that I can have one AirPod in and get a text message and Siri read that message to me immediately, which I've said the name several times, so now my cell phone is sitting up here on my desk listening to me. But then it reads me, or it tells me when I get like a notification, or you have a new comment on a LinkedIn post or something like that. So definitely I'm getting more and more accustomed to using Siri. I mean, I've been using it in my phone, in my car for a long time through like Apple CarPlay.
Works pretty well too,
It
honestly, but
it
it
works
still
very
makes a lot of
well.
mistakes.
Yeah, it works very well. So anyway, the other thing that I threw in here that I thought was interesting was that LinkedIn turned on basically training from your information.
Well, hold on. Before we skip to that, there's one other thing on the Apple one I wanted to mention that I think
Okay.
you will like a lot.
Okay.
The advanced image recognition,
Mm-hmm.
which you and I both use. You mentioned earlier that one of the things you don't like about the preview mode, which I agree with you on, you cannot upload images to it, which is annoying because I wanted to do that the other day. I have serious. I'm looking forward to, but almost kind of dreading how good Apple's going to be with this. Imagine being able to take your phone. I do it now with ChatGPT. I take a picture and say, "What is this?" Imagine your phone able to do that at almost anything with the ability to use local models versus cloud based, which they're getting with OpenAI about. I think you're going to find it interesting though, because I think you're a very image generate oriented person, and I think you're gonna play with that a lot. I'm sorry. Anyway, the next news article, I decided to leave a Maurie's choice,
Yeah, it was
and
interesting because it somebody posted on LinkedIn, "Hey, you guys, y'all need to go check it out because LinkedIn has automatically turned on to where they're going to be using everything that you've put on LinkedIn to train. It's
I don't like
AI."
the automatic. I don't like the automatic turn. That I disagree with.
And that's the one thing,
I don't like the automatic
and
turn on.
it went crazy on LinkedIn for just a little while
Mm-hmm.
about how, here's the steps you need to take, here's what you got to do to go turn it off, and so forth and so on. And I reposted the instructions, but when I reposted it and basically said, I'm choosing not to turn it off because I don't want AIs to start training more and more and more on synthetic data, data that's one AI to another. And for the longest time, we freely put information out there without even
Yeah.
thinking about it.
I think
Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all of the other things that humans have been sharing forever.
I think that one of the key things that you've mentioned many, many times that is very relevant here is it's the good thing about this is it's making people have a conversation they should have been having for 20 years. And
Exactly.
that's about privacy. I mean, I don't agree with the automatically turning everything on thing. I don't think that's right because most people, you think about my mom's not going to know how to turn that stuff off. And I don't think that's right. I think it should default to off.
I
But
agree.
that being said, the whether you and I mean, the fact that you're choosing to leave it on is your choice. The fact that somebody else hates it and can turn it off, which it should default to off, but the fact they can turn it off is their choice. That's the point. That's where privacy, Europe's been there for literally decades in terms of privacy. And the United States, it's been driven by the almighty dollar in terms of, we want to, what do we always say? We tell every time we do a training or professional development, if you're not buying the product,
You are the product.
correct.
Yes.
So, I,
it is, you need to opt out, but, think about it before you opt out because, your
you don't really
information
care that
might be good
much.
information. Yeah. Your knowledge might be good knowledge. And if you don't really care whether or not somebody's willing to pay you for your opinions and stuff, then, stay opted in. So the other thing is I just got back from a tech and learning conference. I was there on
Yeah, in
Friday.
Austin.
In Austin. I was invited to go to that, and I ended up getting an award that I was completely not expecting. Had no earthly idea. It really caught me off guard because I always like to. I love to talk, but I don't like to get up like unprepared. And so it was an award that I got for innovative system administrator when it comes to like the AI pilots and the things that we've been doing at Plano ISD. So it was great. I really, really appreciated it. The things that I noticed while I was there all day long, I went to several different tables and sat in on several different conversations, and I heard people saying that they were blocking AI at their schools. And it was
And
just
what
a
did you
few.
do? What did you do in your post?
Well, and that's just it. Okay, so I heard people saying that they were blocking OpenAI. And the first thing I think about when people say that are the kids that don't have money. Because I ranted. Not on Friday. I waited and then I posted something on LinkedIn yesterday. And basically, I warned them whenever I did the post. I was like, okay, here's my warning. I'm going to rant for a second. And then I posted about how if you're a school district and you're still under the impression that AI is something that you can block, then you got to be reminded that students are miles ahead. And the reason I did this is because one of the classrooms that we piloted at one of our schools, I was
We're
there
still
last
piloting.
week. And, oh, yeah, it's a year-long pilot.
Yep.
So there was a fifth grade student who showed me his Chat GPT link on his cell phone. And he's
And
fifth
was
grader.
pleased with himself for how often he uses it too.
Yes. And so I am sitting here and I'm like mind blown that we have these districts that are thinking that they can. Yeah. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, sorry, you cut out for a second. We're
Okay,
having a
that's
little bit
okay.
of. Go ahead.
Jim, I will edit this. So here we go. On 3, 2, 1. So it just irritates me that, there's these schools out there that are saying they're going to block it. And all they're doing is they're blocking it for students who don't have access through their parents. I mean, we've talked about this before. We buy or purchase or have a monthly subscription to OpenAI, Grammarly, Wolfram Alpha. I mean,
Anthropic.
Anthropic,
Claude.
Claude.
Yeah.
And we do this for our kid so that he can have an even playing field in college.
Oh, let's not kid
So,
ourselves. I didn't do it to even the playing field. I want my kid to have an advantage.
yeah,
Whether
and
you
there's
like it or not, we live in a competitive society, and we have kids. We want our kids to be competitive. I don't want it to be even. I want them to be ahead. And
okay.
so I spend a lot of time working on it. I'm not apologizing for the fact that I spend a lot of time trying to give my kid a competitive advantage. But and I'm
Well,
not wealthy. I'm not wealthy. Think what a wealthy person can do. We're we work for a school district. We're by no means wealthy, but we still try very hard to find that thing that we think might help them.
right.
Everybody does. I mean, it's natural. You're kids. You want to do that.
Well, I think what surprised me the most is that I ranted and I put in there about the kid in fifth grade, and then I put in there about how the schools don't understand that, or maybe they don't care, is that by attempting to block all these AI tools, that they're doing a disservice to the teachers and their students. And then I went on about how, the reality check, students are accessing AI through all these different platforms, smart devices, educational apps, um, entertainment, video games, search engines, social media, video. They're accessing AI in all these different locations, and that we need to embrace it and equip our teachers and our students to use it effectively. So, I mean, and then of course I said, whether you believe that AI is going to change the world or you believe that it's going to destroy the world, hiding from it's not an option. The future isn't waiting, neither are our students. And then I made a little comment at the end, if you need to figure it out, let's talk. And so what I was trying to do by that little comment at the end was, say, we need to have these conversations. Same as what you have pointed out that I say all the time. Thank you, AI, for allowing us to start talking about things that we've had our head in the sand about. So,
Yeah, and let me stop you for a second and kind of rant in there a little bit on your behalf. Yes, I know I'm overprotective because we're married, but at the same time, you've been an educator for a long time. You've been in the technology department. You owned your own technology company, but you've been in the technology department this recent time. You haven't been that long, so you haven't completely, and you may never get completely the IT mindset. But if you're an IT person, you have to have a very pragmatic view of technology in a corporate or any kind of enterprise or networked environment. The pragmatic view has to be people are going to do this no matter what I do. So the question becomes is what do I do that's the least damaging, the most helps the most, or what I'm asked for, or whatever. So what you're really saying to people is I'm not telling you that AI is good or bad. That's not my judgment to make. What I'm telling you is it's here, and there is so many paths into the building. If you think of it metaphorically as a building, like our campus, there's so many paths in the building, you simply cannot block it. And the only thing you can do is block the major paths for the people that have the most to gain, the need for that competitive edge the most, because they already have enough problems. We come with a district that, we're 80% free and reduced lunches. We have kids that they if they didn't have our Chromebook, they wouldn't have access to anything. And in many cases, 30% of them don't have access to internet at home other than their phone. So we do our best to try to take into consideration, the laws, the FERPAs, the privacy, all that other stuff, but we try to give them the best tools we can give them in order to help with that.
right.
We can't stand in judgment of whether or not the privacy conversations are very important. People they should have been having them for 20, 30 years. It's here now. We're having them. But don't get angry with us because we tell you that we probably that you can't block it,
Right.
and you can't
And,
because you
I
can't.
was really
From a
surprised
practical
because,
perspective, you cannot.
well, I think what surprised me the most was that, it did start conversations. I don't even have 1,000 followers on LinkedIn. I mean,
You're right at
Instagram,
that now.
I Instagram, my food blog, I got a lot more followers over there, because people want to look at that piece of cake or that, that pasta dish. But on LinkedIn, I've only been on LinkedIn maybe a year because, that's where I noticed that that's where all the conversations were happening regarding artificial intelligence. And so it's gotten like 3,600 impressions almost, and it's been reshared 17, 18 times, and it's got a bunch of comments on my post and on the reshared post. 99.9% of them are well said, preach it. And one of the things that I probably should have added, and I'm probably going to go ahead and do a follow-up post, is that the teachers need to teach it, but the teachers they need permission to teach it, which is why this state stuff that Pat talks about is so important, because teachers don't know and are not getting enough guidance from their administrators, their districts, their states as to, okay, yes, it is here. Now let's teach it this way. Where's the curriculum? Give us the curriculum that we're supposed to teach on AI literacy. And so until then, teachers are kind of like they're floundering some. So,
and I
I am going to probably make a comment back on the one that said I was, condescending smugness, I think is what he said. But anyway,
I think that's kind of funny, because remember the first time remember the first time we did a training for a group of teachers. This has been nearly 2 years ago when it first came out, and we did a training to introduce a group of teachers to see how they felt about it. We had one come up afterward, our first hostile, as we call them, that was upset with me because she thought I was being smug and condescending about their fears. You need to acknowledge that we have a fear. It was never my or your intention to not acknowledge it. What we're trying to say is we can't do anything about it, because they're going to bring it in the building in their back pockets,
right,
as much as they're going to bring it in the building. Us providing it or not providing it isn't going to change the calculus for some kids. They're still going to have it. The question is, what are the other kids going to do? And how do we come up with a plan, which was our goal, was to come up with a plan. And so if we come across that way, it's because when you sit in IT and you've got thousands of computers that a couple of thousand people you're responsible for with this stuff, you look at it very pragmatically. You can't look at it any other way.
Yeah, I know. And that's the whole thing here. It's like, okay, the person, I'm probably not going to respond, but yeah, it did kind of affect me whenever they said that,
you don't
I
like
was
being
condescending and smuggy and smugness or whatever.
Yeah, they call me that normally, not you.
But then, what got me was that they said that they'd been doing their own thinking, and that just say no is appropriate. Just say no to who?
Okay, again, let's say for the moment we agree with you. Just say no. What does that mean? How exactly do you do that when you've got 10, 12, 15 different companies? Not only that, but even if you said you're going to say no to one, you're going to play whack-a-mole, because it would be, we have parents that come in and they say, well, we don't want our kids to have access to the internet. We don't have many anymore, but we used to have more, and they can sign something saying, okay, well, that's going to be a problem, because everything we get from the state, all the textbooks, everything is online. How are we supposed to stop that? Well, now the textbook people are integrating support for AI into the textbook. The state is using AI to grade the tests. I mean, I think the approach we're trying to take, which is the best one we can come up with, whether you agree with it or not, we are trying to focus very, very heavily on the teachers, because we feel like that if the teachers don't understand it and aren't comfortable with it, they can't set the boundaries for the students when the students start using it in the actual classroom.
Yes.
I think that's that's why you're doing the pilot, because we're trying to figure out how the best way to do that.
I'm just happy that the person's gotten no likes on their comments.
What you're happy about mainly is what you should be happy about, and I think you are.
Conversation.
It's making conversations, because we, for the past 2 years, we've been talking about this stuff since it came out in November of 2022, I think, which is, I had a little bit of earlier access to it, but right about now, honestly, 2 years ago, ever since I showed it to you the first time when I was working on it, we have had this desire to let people know this. We don't see a way to stop this. This is coming. If you can't stop it, what do you do to make it better for the kids? At the end of the day, teachers aren't perfect. They're human. Administrators aren't perfect. They're human. But most teachers that I know have the best interest of the students in mind. Now, What teachers don't have a right to do is think that their beliefs are the only belief. And if you don't give guidance, then they can do that. And I'm not saying my belief is the only belief, nor yours.
It's a group of people, the
It's a
group
group
mentality.
and that's what we've been doing ever since we introduced AI to Llano ISD. Even with our first chatbot, we have always piloted everything. It's what you're doing right now.
Yes.
Is a different kind of pilot, but why do we do that? Because we don't believe we know everything. We think
Correct.
at the end of the day, the teachers have to be part of the conversation.
Yes,
That's
do.
the point.
And
Anyway,
on that note, we are going to wrap up for the evening
what? I
because
can't
we have
rant
been
some more
talking.
too?
No, we're done ranting. We're done
Okay.
ranting. So
Okay,
anyway,
hold on real quick. You forgot to talk about next week.
oh, next week. What else going on next week? Goodness
We've
gracious.
got
I have a
our
lot
next
going on next
podcast.
week.
And our next podcast.
Our next podcast, our next 3 or 4 podcasts, we are going to be having some guests on the show. We're going to start out with a gentleman named Bruce Randall next time. And he is someone who does a lot of stuff for like AI and integration into businesses. So he's a marketing guy, and he's going to talk about AI and how it's changing some of our businesses out there. So I'm looking forward to that.
I think, but since we're running out of time, I know we can't talk about all the ones we're going to have on, but I think this one's interesting because you and I have actually given some presentations to small business groups in here and in neighboring towns, and I feel like I'm interested to hear his perspective on the business based on versus what we saw and what we got asked, because we gave our first one over a year ago to a group of people in Fredericksburg, which is nearby here. So anyway, I'm interested to see what he's going to have to say about that. And then we've got some follow-ons we'll kind of talk about. And then
I'm going to be talking to an educator that's doing a pilot at her school system. That's it's not what we're doing, but it's basically she is like an instructional technologist, and she has some teachers that she's starting like an AI club, and we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to have the gentleman from Copy Leaks on. We're going to talk to him about like AI and plagiarism. So we have some really great guests coming up over the next few weeks. Also, I'm headed to the Austin AI Alliance on Wednesday evening of this next week.
Me too, apparently.
I am a co-chair now of the training and education group. I'm a co-chair for that nonprofit. And then I'm also going to the Austin Talent Development meeting and presenting on Thursday evening of next week. So
yeah, we got a whole bunch of other stuff we're doing in November.
on Friday of next week. So it's going to be it's a fun week. So anyway, my name is Maurie, and I'm here with my husband, Jim, and it is Sunday evening, and we are talking about artificial intelligence. We thank you very much for joining us on our podcast, and we hope that you have a marvelous rest of the week.